Howdy y'all, Christi here with Little Salty Homesteader. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I am here today out in the garden, obviously, because I am about to be direct sowing some carrots. Now, carrots can be a little bit tricky to germinate and get going. So before I get started, I'm going to give you guys a little bit of planting information, talk about the varieties that I'm going to be planting this year, and then we'll get out in the garden and get those going. So carrots are a cool season crop, so you'll want to grow them in either the fall or the spring. I typically like to grow them in the fall better because that is the longest period of milder temperatures that we have here in North Texas. Direct sowing is best because you don't want to disturb those roots if you did, try to start them and then transplant them out, because then you'll end up with either misshapen or ill-formed carrots in the end. You'll want to direct sow into loose, phosphorus-rich soil. So where I'm going to be planting them today, I just amended for a second time with some more compost. Then I added some multi-purpose vegetable fertilizer and some bone meal. The bone meal is going to contribute phosphorus to the soil, which will then help with root growth, which is what we're trying to grow with carrots. Carrots typically germinate better whenever soil temperatures are 75 degrees or below. So trying to plant them in July, not the greatest experiment ever done, as I learned last year. So waiting until temperatures start to cool down, you're going to get much better germination rates. Also, they don't like to germinate whenever it is super hot outside. They are going to be much more productive when the temperatures are below 90 degrees outside. Now, full disclosure, in 2020, I successfully germinated an entire grow bag full of carrots by keeping the soil moist with the utilization of ice cubes. The ice cubes would melt, cool the soil temperatures down, sort of kind of trick the carrots into thinking it was cooler than it was, and I had a whole bag full of carrots. So I can't really do that here with a 9.5 foot raised bed, but if you're trying to grow in small spaces and you're really trying to get them to germinate, maybe a little ice will work for you. Another thing to know about carrots is they do take 14 to 21 days to germinate, so you really have to be patient with them, and you have to keep the soil at a consistent moisture level the entire time. You cannot let that upper layer of soil that's covering your seeds dry out, otherwise your seeds are not going to germinate. That's going to be the trick for me this year, is trying to maintain soil moisture in this bed that gets full sun. So wish me luck. So there's several methods that I have seen used to direct sow your carrot seeds to try to get them to germinate, try to get proper spacing, all of those things. I have tried several of them, some with success and some not. So let me just detail them very quickly for you. So the very first and most simple method, the one that I'm going to be using today, is to simply dig a shallow trench, scatter your seeds in that trench, cover loosely with soil, and then after those carrots germinate, you'll then come in and thin them out to where they're 2 to 3 inches apart instead of all clustered together. The second method involves a little bit more effort, but it is almost equally as easy. You will mix a little bit of sand with your carrot seeds, dig that same trench, and then scatter the sand seed mixture into the trench and cover loosely with soil. The idea behind the sand is it helps give the soil that loose, fluffy texture that carrots really thrive in, and it helps add a little bit more spacing in between those teeny tiny carrot seeds. The third method is the method that I utilized last year, and while I don't have any complaints about it due to the gardener's errors and not the garden's, I did not have good success with it, and that is going to be seed tape. So by utilizing seed tape, you're going to ensure that your carrots are already properly spaced, so you don't have to come back and thin them. So you can make your own seed tape at home using some toilet paper and like a glue made with like flour and water. Or you can buy a pre-made one from a company like Haas Tools. Now, if you make your own, you can make it with any carrot seed that you have, but if you buy a pre-made one, then you're sort of limited to whatever options they carry. So kind of the pros and cons of either. And like I said, I don't really have anything bad to say about that method because I think it was more the gardener's fault and not the carrot tape's fault as to why I did not have a good carrot year last year. So maybe next year I'll try it again, but this year I'm sticking, wow, words are hard. I'm sticking with the simplest is the best sort of theory to go on to see if I can get some carrots to grow. The next few are going to involve a little bit more effort, not as much as the seed tape, but a little bit more than just scattering in the soil and hoping for the best. So the first one is going to be make a cornstarch slurry. So you'll make an extra thick cornstarch slurry where it's like a gel-like consistency. Mix your seeds into that, put it into a piping bag, and then just pipe that slurry into straight lines within your growing space. I have utilized that method. I have successfully grown carrots with that method, but it is very time consuming to make the slurry, wait for it to cool down, add the seeds, get it all mixed in, put it in the piping bag, and then come out and pipe it exactly where you want it to be. I don't have time for all that. The next method is going to be to plant your seeds in the soil and then cover it with moist cardboard. So what that's going to do is it's going to ensure that the soil retains the moisture that it needs in order for those carrots to germinate, and it kind of keeps you from messing with them for that 14 to 21 days while you're waiting for them to pop up out of the soil. One of the downsides to that is that the cardboard can still dry out, and if those seeds do germinate a little earlier than you expect them to and they're not getting the sunlight, they're going to die right away. So I have utilized that method. I have had success with that method, but please be aware that there are some cons and some things that you have to look out for when you do use it. And then very similar to the cardboard method, you can also go ahead and sow your seeds into your desired location and then cover it with burlap. The burlap is still going to allow the light to get in, but it's going to help retain the moisture. I have utilized that method. I have grown carrots with that method. I will say the downside to that is after the carrot seeds germinate, once they're poking through the burlap, it's very tricky to remove it without pulling up the baby carrots that you worked so hard to get to germinate in the process. So again, it is a useful method. It is a successful method, but I just wanted you to be aware that there are limitations for that as well. And then the last and probably easiest method, probably the most fun too, is to just chaos sow them. So what I like to do when I'm chaos sowing is I will just throw a bunch of seeds into an empty spice container like oregano or something, and then I'll just scatter them out in the garden, water them in, and walk away. That method, obviously the downside is you don't really have a whole lot of control over it, and then because you're not really covering it with any soil, those seeds are going to dry out very, very quickly. So the germination rates, unless you're chaos sowing in the rain, probably not going to be that great, but it is definitely a fun way to go. All right, so now we can talk about the varieties. Let me just dig them out of here. There's a bunch. All right, so the first variety that I'm going to be sowing into this raised bed right here today is going to be Littlesalty. Isn't that beautiful? This carrot has a deep purple exterior with a bright orange interior, sweet, delicious flavor. The Baker Creek website said it germinates within 12 to 18 days and reaches maturity in 75 days. After your seeds germinate and you thin them out, you want to thin them out to a 2 to 3 inch plant spacing. Now, I did not see any information on the size of these carrots once they reach maturity, so I don't know if they're going to be a shorter carrot or a longer carrot. So I'm just going to opt for planting in the raised bed. That is 17 inches deep. I think that's plenty of space for these carrots. The next variety is going to be New Carota. There we go. So we have a bright orange, lovely beauty there. So the New Carota is a sugar-sweet, bright orange carrot. It has a blunt tip that will help it grow in tough soil. So if you're growing in ground in somewhere like North Texas where we have dense clay and it can be really hard to grow things in, this variety might work out okay for you. It is a heat-tolerant variety that reaches maturity in 70 to 80 days. It will germinate in about 12 to 18 days, much like the Littlesalty. And again, you're gonna want that plant spacing thin to 2 to 3 inches apart. Now this variety, it does say it can be grown in deep containers greater than 12 inches, in raised beds, or in the ground. And the next variety is going to be Purple Dragon. And this carrot has a reddish purple exterior with an orange interior. It is a sweet carrot with a hint of spice. It reaches maturity in about 70 days, germinates in 12 to 18 days. It can tolerate light frost. It is 6 to 8 inches long at maturity, so a very average sized carrot. And then whenever you thin out those little seedlings, you're going to thin them to 2 to 3 inches apart. Now the next few varieties I will insert pictures for because they don't have pictures on the seed packets for Johnny's. That's perfectly fine. So the first variety is actually going to be Shin Kuroda. Going to be Shin Kuroda, which is sort of the grandfather to the new Kuroda variety. It is an orange carrot. It is a shorter variety at 3 to 5 inches long, which is great for tough soils like that North Texas dense clay I was talking about with the new Kuroda. It is a heat tolerant variety. It reaches maturity in 58 days, and you will thin it to 2 to 3 inch spacing once all your seeds have germinated. The next variety is going to be Deep Purple. This is an F1 hybrid variety that is dark purple all the way to the core of the carrot. It is perfect for juicing and has 7 to 8 inch roots, reaches maturity in about 73 days, and again, thin it to 2 to 3 inches between little seedlings whenever they germinate. The next variety is Ruby Pack. This is an F1 hybrid red carrot that intensifies in color when cooked. These carrots have 7 to 8 inch long roots, reach maturity in about 72 days, and thin it to 2 to 3 inches between each seedling. The last variety of carrot that I'm going to be starting today is Gold Nugget. Another F1 hybrid with deep yellow roots. These carrots reach 5 to 7 inches long, reach maturity in about 68 days, and thin it again to 2 to 3 inches in between each seedling. Now, a couple more notes on carrots that I didn't mention earlier in the video. They can be eaten raw, steamed, roasted, stir-fried, grilled, pickled, fermented, utilized in soups, stews, curries, smoothies, juices, relishes, and more, making this root crop one of the most versatile vegetables in the kitchen. Patience is key with carrots and maintaining consistent soil moisture. So if you're an impatient gardener like I am, it is really tempting to plant your carrot seeds and come out each and every day, 2 or 3 times a day, to see if you have little baby carrot sprouts yet. It's going to take us time before we see any progress on those poor little carrots. And one last note about the carrot tops. They are also edible, making the entire vegetable usable in your kitchen. Now, a lot of times the way that I have seen the carrot tops used is in pesto, but I'm sure there's many other uses. That's just the first one that came to mind. But now that we have the carrot discussion out of the way, let's get planting. All right, we are out in the middle raised bed that is within my tomato/pepper patch, and you can see I already have all my little trenches dug out for all of the carrot seeds, all 7 varieties. Now we are going to be planting some beets at that end, and then the other end doesn't have anything slotted for it just yet, but there's also going to be several brassicas transplanted into here as well in a few weeks, and those are just kind of wrap around the entirety of this raised bed. I'll start clearing out these peppers as well as we get closer to that time. But I did want to briefly talk about how I amended the soil in here to get this ready for some root vegetable planting. So I had already added some compost a few weeks back, a couple of weeks ago, and then I added another bag in here yesterday, which added about 2 more inches of compost to this part of the bed. Perfectly awesome. Then I added some more all-purpose fertilizer, and then I added blood meal for all of those brassicas that are going to come in here. And then I also added in some bone meal, which is kind of like this white powdery stuff that you can see and some molasses. The reason for the molasses is it's going to draw the beneficial microbes in the soil up closer to the surface, which is going to help deter fire ants from this bed and also kind of help boost the growth of the rest of these crops that are going to be planted in here. So this is all ready for planting. At this point, we just sprinkle the seeds in. I'm going to cover them with this soil just to make sure they have something light and fluffy on top, and then I'll get it watered in, and that will be the carrot planting done for today. So if you could see how tiny those carrot seeds are, it's very difficult to individually plant them. So we're just gonna opt for the sprinkle method and then thin them out as they germinate. So I'm just kind of taking a pinch and I'm just gonna sprinkle them down this trench that I dug, and we'll call that good. But that's all I have for this video for direct sowing carrots here in North Texas. If you found this video informational and useful, please like, subscribe, comment. Otherwise, until next time, go find a way to get those garden manicures. Bye!